It never seems to stop, okay? It seems like all the time there's always something new coming along where people who don't understand video games, people who don't play video games, and who just generally don't know what they're talking about continue to try to push a false narrative that violent video games cause in real life violence. This has been something that has been debunked by hundreds of studies. The studies that have concluded that they cause more violence are very specific about the situations and other tendencies that can lead to that increase in violence, things like that. Most people who say that there is a cause between, I guess, playing video games and then going out and hurting people are basing themselves on studies that are very nitpicky, that don't really cover the entire subject, that are clearly influenced by other sources and things like that. So, scientifically, there's a lot more evidence that says that video games don't cause in-real violence. But you know what? I don't need to explain this to you. The majority of you understand this because, well, I run a gaming channel. We've talked about this before with other subjects. And a lot of you know that it just isn't logical, okay? So, there is a new front that they're using to attack video games, especially violent video games, and what they're trying to do now, instead of whatever else they've tried in the past not working, they are trying to put forward a bill, a law, that would actually increase a 10% tax on violent video games, mature video games in specific, which they hope would curb gun violence and actual violence in other ways. Now, obviously, nobody who plays video games would ever put forward such a bill. This has been put forward by a Pennsylvania lawmaker. Republican State Representative Christopher Quinn introduced House Bill 109, which would tax video games more if they contain intense violence, which is pretty much all mature video games. I don't think I've ever seen a video game that was rated mature that didn't have violence in it, so let's call it for what it is. Now, this bill has been called a sin tax by some, which isn't an accurate representation of what it really is. So, basically what we're gonna do here, okay, with no actual scientific evidence that video games cause in real life violence, with that being logically inferior as a reason or an excuse really for gun violence, okay, we're just gonna go ahead and put this bill forward. We're gonna charge people more for playing video games, which in the United States, it's been pretty obvious that yes, we do have a gun violence problem in the country, but have you ever noticed that it seems like instead of actually creating solutions, that these lawmakers, who generally are elderly people, a bunch of old men, a bunch of old rich men, should I say, who obviously don't play video games, they put forward all these different laws and ideas, and of course it's never people's fault, okay? It's the video games, it's the movies, it's the music. Now, I support the Second Amendment, but I've always loved this argument, or this, I guess, hypocrisy in the arguments. So gun supporters have always said, obviously, that people kill people, guns don't kill people. Guns are inanimate objects, and they can't really, just jump up and kill somebody. But then these are the same exact people who go out and they try to enforce laws like this, they introduce bills like this, and they spread misinformation like this. From my knowledge, video games are an inanimate object. They can't just hop up and kill somebody just like a gun, so why is it we're using that for one argument with guns, but then when it comes to games, we completely flip logic, and, it's gotta be the games that are causing the violence, and that's what's causing those kids to act up, right? We never hold parents accountable for buying their kids the games. We never hold parents accountable for raising children who aren't problematic. Your kid had to have killed 8 people in the school with his dad's rifle that was unlocked because he played Red Dead Redemption 2. That has to be the case, right? That's the only logical answer we can come up with. And the unfortunate truth is that the United States is a very uninformed country full of people who don't know anything about this topic and unfortunately might be swayed into following these kinds of legislation. A Pew Research Center study actually says that 53% of adults don't think video games make people violent, but 40% do believe that. 40% believe that video games are the cause for some people's violence, which is just, I don't even know what to say about that, except that people are obviously uneducated, they're not being informed properly, and it's a problem with the whole country. You see this across topics. It's not just this, of course, but I will say if this law became law, okay, I'm glad that they chose something that mattered to put this tax money towards. The extra revenue from this tax would go towards safety programs for schools. These could be anything, at least from my understanding, from like school resource officers, police officers in schools and stuff to prevent violence and shootings, maybe even counseling for children who have home problems and things like that. So if this tax is going to come into law, and if I'm gonna have to give basically an extra $6 on every $60 video game that I buy because, well, some uneducated douchebag in Congress said that I have to, at least it's going towards something that matters, and it's not hopefully going to fatten the pocket of some, rich fat cat in Washington, but I mean, we all see this, right, for what it is. This is just fear-baited, ill-advised legislation that, yet again, instead of solving the problem, is just a workaround towards blaming something else. That's all it is. So the idea behind this is that hopefully it's going to curb violence, okay? So let's take a kid, for example, right? Okay, he shoots 20 people in a school shooting. You would like to blame it on Grand Theft Auto 5, okay? So right now, without this law being in place that is going to increase basically the cost of video games by 10%, can that kid walk into a GameStop and legally purchase a copy of Grand Theft Auto 5 by himself? The answer to that is obviously no. He cannot walk into a GameStop by himself with no parental supervision and buy that video game for himself. So the only way that he can buy that game is if he has an adult's permission and supervision to buy the game. The violent video game that you're claiming is the reason that he becomes violent and kills those people in his school. So is it not his parents' fault for buying him said video game? And if you agree with that, then why is it that you're trying to increase the cost of the video game? The parents are still going to buy the game for him. The parents are still going to give him what he wants, which is effectively not going to stop any violent crime, at least by what you're trying to hypothesize. So why are we even increasing the price of video games in the first place? No matter how you ration this out, no matter how you try to actually get into this lawmaker's shoes and try to understand what's going on in his head, the same conclusion always comes out. It's yet another way for them to blame video games, to blame something that isn't really the problem for something instead of actually solving the problem. And the truth behind it is that yes, it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to ignore the problem instead of facing it head on. But we do realize that kids are dying. Okay, people are being killed. And instead of solving that problem or even attempting to actually solve it, you're instead basically punishing people who have nothing to do with the problem. You're ignoring science, you're ignoring fact in order to just, basically shift blame. So congratulations, I hope you sleep well at night knowing that. So knowing that this tax would be ineffective and that video games aren't really the cause for violent behavior in the first place, how do you think that this is going to go forward? And this has been tried before, this quote-unquote sin tax has been tried before. How do you think this is going to go? Well, the best thing you can do is to contact this guy himself. Contact your representative, Christopher Quinn, especially if you live in Pennsylvania and he is your representative. That would be preferable. That way it's actually people from his area who will be voting for him. You can contact him at the link down below. Even if you don't live in Pennsylvania, it would be nice if you would contact him. And if this goes to vote, make sure that you contact representatives who will be voting on the issue as well. That way, you let them know. If you vote for something that ignores science, that ignores facts, and all it does is punish people who aren't involved in the problem, I will not be voting for you again, effectively cutting your paycheck. So, let them know. And I've always loved this argument. I've had this argument in real life plenty of times, okay? There's people who, once again, don't know what they're talking about on this issue, who love to argue the point, which is something, it's human nature. People do it all the time. But I've heard this argument, okay, where they say that, well, if cigarettes are taxed and they're given a sin tax and things like that, why shouldn't video games that cause violence and that contain violence, why shouldn't they be taxed? Why should some things be taxed and others shouldn't, okay? Especially if video games apparently are causing violence. Well, number one, they don't cause violence. I think we can all agree on that. But cigarettes and video games are not the same thing, okay? Do video games give you lung cancer? Does consuming a video game give you cancer or increased risks of like emphysema and COPD and dozens of other diseases? Okay, does it directly affect and hurt the people around you who inhaled the smoke from your video game? If you blow on a video game, is there going to be, hazardous smoke in a baby's face that, kills its lung cells and hurts it? Because I don't think so. Do video games cause a horrible stinky ass smell that nobody who doesn't smoke likes to smell? I don't think that's the case. Cigarettes and all these other things cause hundreds of thousands, if not millions of global deaths per year, just because people consume them. That is not the case with a video game. Video games are already expensive enough. I mean, $60 for a brand new game, and most people don't just buy one game per year. At least people who actually play video games seriously. Most people buy at least one new video game per year, so especially if you're like me, I buy all kinds of different games. It's part of my job, I buy them, I play them for gameplay, I talk about them, and things like that. I spend probably thousands of dollars per year on video games. It's already expensive enough. I think anyone who actually plays video games can agree with me on that, even if for whatever reason you believe the pseudoscience behind video games causing violence. So why would you punish us more by causing the price of video games to go up yet again over something that hasn't been proven, can't be proven because it's not the truth. I think we're all in agreement on this, thankfully. I mean, I might be wrong, maybe I'm just wrong and everyone's gonna think differently than me, but I like to think we all agree that tackling video games as the problem is the wrong approach, especially when it's such a pressing issue as gun violence. Now, thankfully, this law would only be enforced in Pennsylvania, as far as I know, considering it's just a Pennsylvanian representative who has introduced this bill. I think it's only going to the Pennsylvania House. But if this passes, this is going to become more widespread. This is going to get passed in other states. And if this passes, I guarantee you, literally the days after this happens, you're going to see these bills just start popping up in other states. And thankfully, there is an argument against this bill that it actually is a violation of the United States Constitution. The U.S. Supreme Court made clear in Brown versus Entertainment Merchants Association and Entertainment Software Association that video games are entitled to full protection of the Constitution, aka things like the First Amendment with the freedom of speech, and that efforts like this to single out video games based on their content will be struck down. I hope that that's the case. I hope that the Constitution would be upheld in a situation like this being passed, and I hope that this will be one day declared unconstitutional if it even gets far enough. This is yet another example of the media, of the government, of people, especially older people, who have no clue about video games, yet again blaming it for a situation. We've seen it so many times. I mean, God, it seems like everywhere we go, everyone's always blaming video games for something. We watched that Sunday morning special or whatever a few weeks ago about the kids being probed and playing Fortnite or whatever in the restaurant and ignoring their parents. What would you do and whatnot? And of course, it spread that stupid ass message of, well, the kids are addicted to Fortnite and they can't do this. And instead of, actually blaming the parents for their kids playing video games too much. After the Madden shooting, of course, everyone tried to say that because he was mad at the video game that he killed everybody, and that's a proof that this video game cause violence, even though of course Madden's not a violent video game, so that kind of shoots that whole thing dead in the water. Oh wait, can't say that might be a 6% tax on this video, so it's just ridiculous, man. It just seems like as long as we keep going with these situations and things keep popping up like this, it's just going to keep on happening. For whatever reason, the pseudoscience seems to just keep popping up in favor of these laws and stuff like that, and I don't understand, man. People just have to remain vigilant about situations like this. You need to contact your representatives and make sure that they're not passing some stupid shit like this. And this country needs a wake-up call. People need to understand that you can't blame video games for something so severe. I don't know about you guys, but literally the first video game I ever played was Grand Theft Auto 3 on the PlayStation 2. Me, I don't think I ever killed anybody. I don't think I ever shot my school up or anything, so I'm assuming that's the case with most of you as well, or else how would you really be watching this video? But it's ridiculous. Make sure to do whatever you can to stop this, okay? Contact your representatives. Of course, share this. Make sure you share situations like this, and you speak out against that pseudoscience. Make sure you educate people in your lives about the truth behind situations like this, that video games are not violence-causing, just demon machines. Because the more that we continue to educate people and the more we strike things like this dead, okay, the better gaming can be, because obviously we don't have to worry about problems like this, and we can save people that extra $6 on every game, which is going to add up. So, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you're brand new around here. I post videos like this almost daily. Follow me over on Twitter at @SubToOptimus. I post memes, thoughts, and updates over there as well. It's also a great way to make sure you get brand new live notifications the moment videos come out, because we all know YouTube's broken. Subscriptions and notifications don't always work. Make sure you're following there. Join the Discord down below. Also a way to get notifications and lots of great things going on over there. Thank you to my channel members for your $5 a month. Your support helps my channel tremendously. If you'd like to become one and help support my content for only $5 a month and get some perks in return, make sure to do so by hitting the join button down below. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, putting a 10% tax on everything and signing out.